Well, Doug, I'm Peter. Thank you, and you're most welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. Today's a special day because you're our guest. But also, I've actually been interviewing leaders of the Unionist Party for over half a century now. And this is a little still of me, whoops, if I can get it up, with Brian Faulkner, 52 years ago. So it's also the last time I'll be doing it because at the end of this year, I'll be handing over to my colleague, and I'm delighted about that, Tricia Lynn, and she's going to be joining us as well today. We also got a note from the President of Ireland, President Michael D. Higgins, who wanted to wish us all the best. Wonderful. And that's certainly a rare honor for us. And I think Trish is going to read it out.
I am indeed. So good afternoon, everyone. And I'll just get stuck into a message from President Michael D. Higgins. May I send my best wishes to all those taking part in politics and action. This is a most important initiative aimed at empowering our young people to become engaged and proactive citizens in an ever more complex, interconnected and uncertain world. By taking part in this programme, participants are making an explicit statement of their wish to be involved in decision-making processes and to use their voice to make a difference to their communities and their society. There can be no doubt that the ongoing transformation of the island of Ireland requires energy, creativity, and enthusiasm of a new generation who will have a key role to play in the crafting of our shared future. I am deeply grateful to all those young people who are willing not only to envision a better future, but to participate in its creation, seeking opportunities to bring their views to the table as they question the status quo with passion and innovation, understanding that a truly equal world must be based on a spirit of shared humanity and solidarity. I am delighted to have this opportunity to commend you for your participative citizenship, which augurs so well for the future. We are indeed so fortunate on this island to have young people who offer their time generously in order to become consciously involved in directing change. I thank you for that spirit of active participation and wish you well in all your future endeavours. Michael D. Higgins.
Thank you very much for that, Trish. And that is an amazing honour for us. But we're also equally honoured to be able to welcome the leader of the Unionist Party today, Doug Beattie. You're very welcome to joining us, and thank you very much for joining us. And that's really what Politics in Action is all about. We try to have equal respect and equal relationship with people across the island, regardless of what they believe. And often we won't agree with much of what we hear, but we always know with everyone we listen to, there's something worth listening to. And I think we're going to start. We're not going to start with the orange and green. I think we've got 3 questions, all on climate change, which is certainly very topical after all the talking that's been going on in Glasgow. And I think in front of me, we should have Megan from St. Joseph's High School. We should have Anna from St. Louise's, and we should have Rachel from Newry High. So let's go to the first question. And let's go, and we'll take all 3, and then Doug will come to you if you're agreeable. Let's start with Megan's question.
Hi, sorry, my camera isn't working, but my question is, for young people of the generation today, the climate crisis is a major concern. Would it not make more sense to prioritise economic links between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland to help reduce our carbon footprint?
Right, well, thank you very much for that question, Megan. And now let's go to Anna, who's got another question about climate change.
With climate change being such a huge topic in the media, what are your views on how the North of Ireland is dealing with climate change?
And finally, let's go to Rachel from Newry High.
What steps are you taking towards tackling climate change?
Right, well, there are 3 questions on climate change. Over to you, Doug.
Peter, thank you, and thank you all for those questions. Can I just say at the very start, you must be very proud of that letter from the President of Ireland, and they were fine words indeed, and it's testimony to everything that you do, and I will add in his applause of everything that you have done, Peter. So well done to you all in regards to that. To come to the questions, I mean the climate and the green economy has become a really big issue now, and not just because COP26 is on. This is something we need to be looking at way past and long time before COP ever took place, because we are in a climate emergency, and anybody who's out there denying a climate emergency really is not keeping up with where we are, and we really need to start taking this seriously. And you know, as somebody who's and I'm in my 50s now, mid 50s, I look to young people like yourselves, and I say we must leave a planet here fit for yous to grow up in, but yous also have a huge responsibility as well to make sure that we have a planet fit for the next generation, for your children and your children's children. So we all have a responsibility here, but the first thing we all have to do is agree that there is a climate emergency and that we need to do something about it. And I suppose that seems like an obvious thing to say to you all, but there are people out there who will deny that there is a climate emergency, who will not listen to the facts or the statistics, and they will go absolutely against everything that we need to collectively come together to do. Whether or not an all-island economy will help us tackle the climate emergency on this island, well, there's an argument that it could well do. But the reality is, you know, we belong to a whole set of islands. So you could argue the point that an all islands economy, looking at the issues that we all face and trying to do things in a similar fashion, could help the tackle our climate emergency. I mean, if you look at Ireland and what Ireland's trying to do in trying to reduce our carbon levels down to zero net carbon, that's in line pretty much with what the United Kingdom is doing. What is slightly different is how we're going about achieving that. But I think what we're doing is right in the manner in which we're doing it. I think we're probably far more linked together in dealing with this than people realize. So I think we maybe need to stop looking just at this island, but we need to look beyond this island to the islands that surround us, to where we sit within Europe, to where Europe sits within this hemisphere. So this is a bigger issue than what is just this patch of earth and this geographical space that we live in. But we do need to play our part, and that part is really important. As for Northern Ireland and what we're doing, it's shameful that Northern Ireland is the only part of the United Kingdom which doesn't have a climate bill. And that needs to be rectified pretty quickly, because if we don't get it fixed, if we don't get a bill in place, then we will not be doing anything to rectify the problems that are out there. You will probably know that there's two bills going through at the minute. We have Claire Bailey's Green Party's Private Members Bill, which we are co-signatories to, with Steve Aiken as being the co-signatory to it. And then we have the DAERA bill under Edwin Poots, the minister, which is going through as well. Two bills. Our concern is that neither will get through by May, that the argument over some targets, which are either 2045 or 2050, could really throw us off track. What we're saying in the Ulster Unionist Party, it's not about the targets for 2050, it's about the targets in the next 5 years. It's about May. As soon as we can pass a climate bill in May, we can start doing things. We can start look for innovation in order to start making the changes. So for me, it's not about the next 25 years, it's about the next 5 years. It's about what we do now to start the process of change. The Ulster Unionist Party have been working on this. I mean, you know, we've brought out our new paper, which has just come out on that, and you can get that online. And we're really focusing on low carbon hydrogen. And you will know, of course, that you've got green hydrogen, which is completely carbon free, but you also have blue hydrogen, which gives off some carbon, but that carbon that the blue hydrogen gives off can be captured in a different way. So we want the next program for government to look at low carbon hydrogen. Electric vehicles will stop being sold in the UK. Petrol vehicles and diesel vehicles will stop being sold in the UK in 2030. So we want to invest in electrical charging points for electric vehicles. So therefore, we're proposing that all planning permission now, from next government onwards, that there must be something in that planning permission which puts in place electric charging points. So that's something else we're asking for, as well as a green public transport. We all know that we have hydrogen buses as well. TransLink are looking to create electric trains, and we'll support that. And of course, we're looking at people using cycle lanes, and there being more cycle lanes as well. So we're looking for green transport and clearly green home heating as well, and incentivized green home heating. And the last one, which is really important, I think the tree canopy in Northern Ireland, it sits at about 8 or 9%, which is pitifully low, the lowest in the whole of the region. So we want to try and get that raised up to about 16%, but that's going to take an awful lot of tree planting. And as we all know, tree planting is a great way of capturing carbon as well. So there's an awful lot that we need to deal with, and that lays out some of it and some of the problems that we face. Peter?
Great, Doug, thanks very much. And that's a very ambitious project. I'll just go back to our three questioners and find out if they've got any supplementaries. Megan, I know your camera isn't working, but do you want to ask a supplementary question? Were you happy with the answer you got?
No, yeah, I was happy with that answer.
Okay, thanks very much. And let me also ask Anna and Rachel, would either of you like to ask a follow-up question?
I think all the methods you're taking towards tackling climate change are very good, and it's definitely a step in the right direction.
Right, excellent.
And I think if I can, Peter and Rachel, you're right, and we all have a little part to play, I suppose, but it's those little parts which makes the whole, and we all have that. It doesn't matter what side of the border you're on, it doesn't matter what side of the Irish Sea you're on, it doesn't matter what side of the English Channel you're on. We all have to play our part.
Yeah. Right, we're now going to skip to a section where we've had a record number of questions, and that is on liberal unionism. So I think we're going to hear from Joseph, and I think we're going to hear from Amy in the first question. So if you're both there, Joseph, would you like to go first?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, do you want to go with your question?
Can you hear me? Or?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
All right. Do you believe that the UUP's future political success will rely on people like Stephen McCarthy and Catholics like him, as well as liberal unionists?
Right, and can I just mention that I think Stephen McCarthy, Doug, is someone who is a member of the Unionist Party, has been, I think, shortlisted or nominated to fight a seat, and is a Roman Catholic, which, is it fair to say, it's probably the first time that's happened in an assembly election?
Well, can I just say something? And I hope we understand and take this in the spirit that I'm saying it. Yeah. Stephen McCarthy is running for us in South Belfast, but he's not running for us because he's a Catholic. He's running for us because he's a really good candidate, sure. And because I really like his values, which are in tune with the Ulster Unionist Party, and him personally, his values are in tune with me. And my values is this, and that we need a space here, which we call Northern Ireland. It's a geographical space where we need to respect everybody, where we all need to work together, regardless of your religion, regardless of your sexual orientation, regardless of your background or your culture or your color or how wealthy you are. I believe we all need to work together. I believe in rights. I think there should be rights for everybody. And we need to quantify and codify all of those rights. So I do support same-sex marriage, and the same as Stephen McCarthy. I do support women's rights to have an abortion if they require one. You know, so I support all of these rights and many, many other. And Stephen McCarthy's not unusual in this. Doug Beattie is not unusual in this. Doug Beattie being an Irishman, you know, and many people don't think that being a unionist, you're allowed to be an Irishman. And I've always classed myself as an Irishman. There's many people within the Ulster Unionist Party who have liberal views and liberal values. In fact, if you go into working class loyalist areas, you'll probably find that they have probably more liberal views than many other areas in Northern Ireland. And we shouldn't get them confused with other people who have conservative values. But I think the Ulster Unionist Party's future will be best served when we can reach out to everybody, regardless of who they are, regardless of what they believe in. And where we disagree with somebody, or where I have a different view with somebody, and there'll be people here who I certainly will have different views with, but we have to be respectful. We have to be respectful of everybody's views. So I think that's incredibly important. So Stephen McCarthy is a fantastic candidate, and whether he was a Catholic, a Protestant, a Buddhist, a Muslim, it wouldn't have mattered. He would have been the right man to run in that seat, and that's why he has been selected. And we have many people from different backgrounds and different religions who form the Ulster Unionist Party.
Can I just ask one question? I think what lay behind Joseph's question was that over the last 50, 100 years, it's probably fair to say the Unionist Party haven't fielded very many Catholic candidates, if any. Would Joseph be right in assuming that this is something of a departure from what would have been traditional Unionist practices?
I'm not well, the answer is, Peter, if I can, and Joseph, is I don't know is the answer, because I don't view people in that manner. So it would never dawn on me to look at people in that manner. But I would say something, and whether you know this or not, I'll say this. Stephen McCarthy was already a councillor for the Ulster Unionist Party, already elected. So his going for elected office is not something new. It's just some people hype it up a little bit. The quite interesting thing about Stephen McCarthy is that he's actually a West Belfast Catholic whose grandfather was murdered by the UVF, and he comes from a Labour background. You know, so that's what's really interesting about Stephen. But his views are my views, and that is, we believe in the United Kingdom and we want it to work, but we believe in people even more, and we want it to work with people. And if we can all work together and just look at each other and say, I don't agree with you, but you know what, I can understand where you're coming from, I think that works best.
Let's go to Amy now, and Amy's from Down High. Amy, what's your question, please?
Is it in the interest of moderate Unionists, moderate Nationalists, and Alliance voters to transfer to one another in an Assembly election?
I mean, it's a good question, and it's a real politics question, and especially very particular to Northern Ireland. And you'll all know that as an Ulster Unionist, as a Unionist, people are under pressure saying, if you I have to go and tell everybody out there that once you vote for an Ulster Unionist, you have to go down the voting card and transfer to every other Unionist, regardless of who they are. And I've always said that I won't tell people to do that. People need to earn a vote. And it's up to people to go and earn the vote. And that's not just political parties, that's individuals as well. So my job is to go out to the electorate and sell myself and sell my party and get the vote. It's then up to other political parties to go out and sell themselves and allow people then to say, well, this party deserves my transfer. We need to stop dictating to people on telling them where they need to transfer their votes to. They need to be allowed to look and see who best represents them and who they want to transfer their votes to. That's what I think they should do. We should dictate less. We should listen more and trust more, and people will know who they need to transfer to or who they want to transfer to. And I trust them to do the right thing.
Amy, are you happy with that answer? Are you happy with the answer, Amy?
Yeah.
Great. There you are. You've persuaded another voter. Okay, I think we now got two more questions.
Well, it's as if Amy transfers to me. Well, she can't vote yet. I don't know what age Amy is.
We've now got two more. We've got questions from Ruben at Newry High, and we've got a question from Leila at Ashfield Gales High. Leila, we'll take your question first, if I may.
Do you think that there is room for your liberal values and traditional unionism to work together?
Yeah, if I can, look, it's never easy when you have different opinions in one political party, and it's been said many times within the Ulster Unionist Party, we have people who are really conservative, who really take their lead from their religious beliefs, and that's the path that they follow. And then on the other side, you have maybe people like me and Stephen McCarthy, who we were talking about before, who have more liberal views. Look, it's a case of understanding where people come from. We have been brought up in a particular way. There's many things that have influenced our lives, your upbringing, the school you go to, your parents, the job that they do, what community you come from and where you live. And these all influence your life. As long as you understand the particular issues, as long as you talk about those particular issues and you set the direction that you want to go, and when people ask and ask why you're going that direction, you explain it to them, then I think, you know, you can all coexist, whether you're a conservative unionist or whether you're a liberal unionist or whether you're sort of something in the middle. I think you can coexist, but it's all about communication. Communication for me is by far the most important gift any of us have, being able to communicate ourselves, our position, our stance on any particular issue. And some in my party won't agree with some of the things I'm saying, but it's up to me to sell it to them. And that's what I aim to do.
Now we've got our next question comes from Ruben from Newry High, and just on cue, just you're saying some of your party don't necessarily agree with what you're saying. Ruben's concerned that you might start hemorrhaging some members of your party if they're not happy. But Ruben, why don't you ask your question yourself?
How do you plan to increase support for the Ulster Unionists, given that your more liberal views have resulted in the resignation of one of your councillors?
Yeah, Ruben, thank you for that. I mean, I said when I became the party leader that sometimes you have to shrink to grow, because I fully accepted that some people may not like the direction that I intend to take the party. And I got my party together and I said to them that this is what I will do, is I will set out a number of courses of action. We will discuss those courses of action and then we'll choose one. And if that course of action says we're all going to turn right, then we all turn right. And that's the way you work as a cohesive party. If somebody doesn't want to turn right and they decide to turn left, well, then that's them wanting to go a different way. And having lost Harold McKee, and I liked Harold McKee, and I'm really sorry that he left the party, but he just couldn't travel the journey that I wanted him to go. Some of the things that we had, he couldn't support. He couldn't support same-sex marriage, and he didn't want to support the women having the same rights in Northern Ireland as they have in the rest of the United Kingdom. And you're always going to get that, I suppose. So that's why Harold left. But remember, for every Harold who leaves, there's somebody else who may want to come into the party. And if you look in West Tyrone, you know, and you look at Ian Marshall, an ex-senator in the Irish Dáil, who has joined the Ulster Unionist Party and will stand in West Tyrone. That's somebody who's coming into the party. If you look at Ryan McCready in Foyle, Ryan McCready was a DUP councillor, and now he's an Ulster Unionist Party councillor. So there will always be a bit of an ebb and flow. The task for me is to keep engaging with people, keep telling them why I'm doing what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. And again, if you look at North Belfast, Julianne Core, you know, who comes from the LGBT community, who joined the party and will be running in North Belfast. She came in because we set a vision. And that vision, and you'll have heard this, or maybe you won't have heard this. You've probably heard the cheesy song, but I like the song, A Union of People. You know, I really believe that if you can bring people together, everybody together, then you can grow a political party. And that's what I'm trying to do, Ruben. And of course, I will have conflicts on the way, road bumps in the way where people won't agree with what I'm saying, but I have to deal with them on a day-to-day basis. But what they can't do is detract you from the vision that you have. And my vision is of a thriving economy where people get up in the morning with a sense of purpose and go to bed at night with a sense of fulfillment, where if they get sick, there's good hospitals, where they go to a good school and get a good education, where our infrastructure and roads makes people more connected, and everybody has the ability and the opportunity to travel and do what they can in the future. And that means get married, have kids, and start a life in Northern Ireland for themselves. Then that's what I believe in. So I think I can grow the party by reaching out to people regardless of who they are, and that's what I intend to do.
Great. And we've got another question from Joel at Lagan College. And Joel wants to follow up on a commitment which you made at the recent Ulster Unionist Party conference. Joel, over to you.
Thank you. As part of the commitment you made at the Ulster Unionist Party conference to change Northern Ireland's dysfunctional political system, would you consider supporting the abolishment of our system of mandatory coalition in favour of the conventional Westminster majoritarian system of a government and an opposition?
I guess there's 2 points to that, Joel, and welcome from Lurgan College, which is not too far away from where I am. I guess there's 2 points to that, Joel. Is I certainly believe that we need to have a government and we need to have an opposition. Now, the opposition, people think it's just people who don't want to be involved in government. Opposition has a really important role to scrutinise any government, and I think that's really important. So we had a bill in the we had a bill in the Assembly recently about the provisions for an official opposition so that we can fund it and have the structures in properly, and that was just earlier this week. So I believe in an official opposition, and clearly I believe in government. I do not believe that a 5-party mandatory coalition is producing good government anymore. There's too many in there. There's too many silos. We're not getting stuff done that we should get done, and too many people are able to block legislation. But I also absolutely understand that we need to protect minorities in Northern Ireland. It's the foundation of the Belfast Good Friday Agreement in 1998. Therefore, we do need to have some form of power sharing. My idea was that you would have a power sharing government of 2 parties, the largest nationalist, the largest unionist party, and then we would have a power sharing opposition, which again would be unionists and nationalists. Now, what I'm describing there is a binary choice, and that's just to give it as an example and a flavour to what I'm trying to explain. But I suppose you need to look at that in the round, because there are those who no longer class themselves as either unionist or nationalist, and we need to make sure that there's provisions for them in either government or in opposition as well. So I don't think a 5-party mandatory coalition produces good government anymore. I do believe in government and opposition, but I do believe in the protection of minorities, and therefore it would still need to be some form of power sharing.
We're now going to come on to questions of employment, and again, that's been talked about a lot with the PSNI anniversary, both the PSNI and the NHS. I think our first question comes from Oren at Down High, and our second question comes from Adam at Magherafelt High School. So let's go to Oren first.
Hi, my question is, what must be done to increase the number of Catholics and females that apply to join the PSNI?
And before you answer that, let's go to Magherafelt High School and Adam. Hi, Adam, can you hear us? I think there's a sound problem.
Yeah, I can.
Is that Adam?
Go ahead, Adam.
Yeah. Do you want to ask your question, Adam?
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah. How important do you feel that is that our services like the PSNI and NHS have equal amounts of staff from both communities?
Great. Well, those are 2 great questions, and over to you, Doug.
Yeah. Well, listen. All of our institutions need to be representative of the community that they serve, and therefore, whether it's the police or the NHS, you would hope that recruitment within it would be a representation of this society that we live in, and that means that the different religions are represented, the ethnic minorities that may be here are represented also. We have a proper representation of male and females, that we look at how we can improve the employability of those who are disabled as well. And so therefore, I don't think this is just a binary choice of saying the police must be 50-50, 50% Protestant and 50% Catholic. I think it's far more than that. I think it's greater than that. I think it's about enticing the other communities in as well. Because there's many minorities out there who are underrepresented in all of these areas as well. And clearly, we need to entice more women into it. I mean, I know we're talking about the police, and I know we're talking about the NHS, but even if you look at politics, you need to entice more women into politics. So whatever the force is, you know, if it's the NHS or whether it's the police service, it must be representative of the society that it serves. And the police cases is probably the most stark. And the easiest way to make the police force as representative is to make sure that civic leaders and political leaders are out there selling the police force as a police force for everyone, in order to allow young Catholic men and women or working class Protestants or people from ethnic minorities to say, this is a career for me, and they can then come forward. I'm not a fan, having gone through Patton initially, I'm not necessarily a fan of 50-50 recruitment, because if you just have 50-50 recruitment, you're literally just looking at two demographics, Protestant and Catholics, and I think that would be a bit of a failing, because we would lose so much talent by doing that. But I think you raise a really good point, Oren, that we do need to do something to increase the representation of women and Catholics, men and women, and ethnic minorities in the police service. And of course, it's the same for the NHS as well. We need to increase that, but that's done through persuasion. That's done by showing support. It's done by saying, you know, here is somewhere where you can have a great career, regardless of what your religion is, your color, your background, your sexuality. You know, to me, it's a case of just selling that to people.
Great. Oren, do you want to come back on any of that? Are you happy with the answer?
I'm happy enough with that. Thank you very much for it.
Okay.
Yeah,
and in that case, we're going to go to something that crops up in most of these sessions, and we've got one question on it today, and that's on Brexit, and that's, I think, from you, Lizzie, at Down High.
Yeah, thank you. My question is, has Brexit weakened the union, and if so, how?
Brexit has damaged pretty much everything. You may or may not know, but I'll tell you anyway. So I was against Brexit. My party was against Brexit. We thought Brexit was a bad idea, and it would destabilize Northern Ireland's place within the United Kingdom, and it would destabilize the United Kingdom as a whole. In fact, we warned of it. Our MEP at the time, a guy called Jim Nicholson, said 2 days before the Brexit referendum, if we vote to leave the European Union, there will be border posts in Larne and Belfast. And he was laughed at. And look where we are. And Mike Nesbitt, who was the party leader, said at a committee before Brexit that if you vote for Brexit, there will be a border down the Irish Sea. And again, he was laughed at. So this isn't a case of me sitting here saying in hindsight, we thought Brexit was going to be bad. We were saying Brexit was going to be bad before Brexit took place, because it has weakened the union. It has created division within the union. You just need to look at Scotland and where Scotland is now, to where Northern Ireland is, and the trouble we have here in Northern Ireland and the border down the Irish Sea, and that sense of isolation and an abandonment that many people in Northern Ireland have. Not everybody, no, trust me, not everybody, but you know, but many people in Northern Ireland will feel isolated and abandoned because of the protocol, and the protocol is an outworking of Brexit. So Brexit was not good. It has destabilized Northern Ireland and the rest of the United Kingdom, and I'm not sure that we can put reverse gear in here. You know, we've left. The democratic vote was to leave, and we did leave. And as a Democrat myself, I have to support that. But it was a bad idea, and it was always going to create instability.
Well, one other party that, of course, also opposed Brexit was Sinn Féin.
Yes.
And we're now going to come on to what's probably one of your least favorite questions, because I've seen many a journalist such as Mark Crothers ask this question, and he didn't get very far, but our students want to ask it as well. So let's go to James from Down High and to Catherine from Lismore. Catherine, do you want to go first, and then James, and let's see if you fare any better than the journalists on the BBC and UTV. Catherine, the platform is yours.
My question is, if Sinn Féin are the largest party at the next Assembly election, will you serve under Sinn Féin First Minister?
And James, I think you've got a very similar question.
Yeah, hi. My question is, if Michelle O'Neill becomes First Minister, would you be prepared to serve as the Deputy First Minister?
Okay,
so Doug, you didn't give my Crothers an answer, you didn't give Steve Nolan an answer, but are you going to give our class an answer today?
Look, James and Catherine look lovely, and I hate to be in a position of not giving them an answer. So I can only give you the answer that I give, and I'll say this if I can, please. I already work with Sinn Féin. My party works with Sinn Féin at every level of government, in the executive, on the floor of the Assembly, in Assembly committees, at local government, in council committees. So we already work at every level with Sinn Féin. So this is not an issue of working with Sinn Féin. This is a politics issue and nothing more. So it's not an issue about it's Sinn Féin, because we work with them already. This is a politics issue. And it's a politics issue in saying this, that no political party, whether it's Doug Beattie sitting here, or whether it's Colm Eastwood sitting here, or whether it's Jeffrey Donaldson or anybody else, will tell you that they are going to go into an election to play for second best. They never will. You never lead your team onto a pitch to say, listen, guys, when we lose, this is what we're going to do. We don't do that. You aim to win. And therefore, it's really important for me as a party leader to be cohesive in what I say to my elected representatives and say to them, you will get elected. I will be the First Minister and you will be in that Assembly, and some of you will be ministers. And I have to drive that message. And that's the only answer that I can give you and the only message that I can give you. But I will ask you this question as well to come back to you, because I think sometimes it's slightly unfair that people point the finger at unionists to ask them this very question. I don't mind people asking me. And actually, as an Ulster Unionist, I think I'm getting that finger pointed at me an awful lot more. But ask this question. Somebody ask Alliance Party, if they get enough seats in the next election, will they go into government or will they go into opposition? Because they could do one of both. They won't tell you. Ask the SDLP, will they go into government or will they go into opposition? They won't tell you. So nobody will tell you what they're planning to do. All they will tell you is they're planning to be the largest party. It's a pure politics question and strategy question. And I hope nobody thinks it's a question of saying I'll not work with Sinn Féin, because I already do. And I work with the SDLP and I work with the Alliance Party and I work with everybody else.
So Doug, obviously you're going to go for number one, as all your rivals will. And you'd be crazy if you approach an election on any other basis. I think we all accept that. But I wondered when I watched that interview, I think it was on Sunday Politics with Mark Crothers, whether in fact you were answering the question, because one point you made, and you made it very forcefully, was that under the Constitution, the role of Deputy First Minister and First Minister is exactly the same. One can't move without the other. So no one can ever predict with absolute certainty an election. And in the event, the hypothetical event, that Michelle O'Neill ended up as the First Minister and you got the second highest number of votes, would that be a fairly good indication of your thinking that the two jobs have equal status, and therefore it's unlikely in those circumstances that you turn it down?
It's Peter, it's an interesting one to exploit this slightly. I guess you're absolutely right what you're saying, and I hope James and Catherine understand this, that the First Minister and the Deputy First Minister are absolutely the same. One can't order a paperclip without the other one saying it's okay. One can't sign a letter unless the other one signs a letter. And if one resigns, they resign both of them. So they really are absolutely the same thing. And in many ways, that's the way they should be referred to. They should be referred to as joint First Ministers, I suppose, if you look at it like that. But there is within Northern Ireland a sense and a standing that one, although not factually correct or legally correct, is greater than the other. Yeah. So that's why you will find no political party ever saying that they will play for the second place purely because of that. Peter, now if it was to change, then people would be playing for a single post, which is the post of First Minister, knowing that post of First Minister actually has two people in it. And I guess that's a different ballgame. Yeah. But I hope you forgive me, James and Catherine and Peter, if I just give you that as my answer.
So James and Catherine, I want you to imagine that you were in politics and you were leading a political party, it doesn't matter which one, would you be prepared to talk pre-election about the possibility of coming second? Or would you follow what Doug does and say, well, I'm not prepared to talk about that because I'm leading my party to success? James, do you want to go first, and then Catherine?
Well, I do kind of agree. I think it's important to kind of put yourself first to kind of maybe keep the morale of the party. But I do think that in like our kind of situation, it is important to kind of show a bit of cooperation. Not that you're not showing cooperation, just it's important to recognize.
Okay. Catherine, what do you think?
I'm not really sure because I'm not in that position, but I do see where Doug is coming from, and yeah, I can agree with some of the points he made there.
Well, the thing is,
think,
James and Catherine, is you can always trust me to do the right thing.
Great. Well, thank you both for those questions. And we're now going to switch to a different part of your career, Doug. And the title of this next section is Military Matters. And we've got two people here. I think we've got Aoife from St. Louise's, and we've got two Aoifes, in fact, and Aoife from St. Dominic's. So let's go to Aoife from St. Louise's first, and then Aoife from St. Dominic's.
Hi, as a former soldier, what skills did you learn during your 34 years of service that you have applied to your job today as leader of the UUP?
Aoife, thank you. If Aoife won, thank you. If I can just say that actually I've now been in the military 39 years. I joined as a boy of 16. I left school with no educational qualifications, nothing, no GCSEs, no O levels, no A levels. I didn't go to university. If you looked at my educational achievement sheet, you will see it absolutely blank. That hasn't changed. My educational sheet is still absolutely blank. I have got no educational qualifications whatsoever. I don't tell you that because I'm proud of it, and I will say to you all, please stay in the education and drive to do the best you possibly can. For me, that's important. I guess the point that I'm making is this, that whether you like me or whether you dislike me, whether you agree with what I say or disagree with what I say, I have the ability to sit here in front of you and articulate a point of view and explain to you my thinking in a lucid manner and with a degree of confidence. So that is something that I have learned through my military service, not through my educational achievements. So that's allowed me to do that. It's also given me courage. And everybody thinks of courage as being a physical courage, but there's something else, and that's a moral courage. And a moral courage is far harder to be able to get to grasp with than physical courage, because moral courage is about doing what you know to be the right thing, even if it's not popular. And those who either follow me on Twitter or hear me on the radio or hear me talk will know that I get an awful lot of abuse from people who don't like what I'm doing because I have liberal views and liberal values. And I want to reach out to everybody, regardless, as I said earlier, of their religion or sexual orientation or color or culture or what their status is. You know, so I get an awful lot of abuse in regards to that. But the moral courage is the piece where I know I'm right, so I will keep going. So those are things which are really, really important to me, Aoife. The other one is leadership. And people think leadership is just standing up and saying something. I've got to say to you, and something you will learn in later life, leadership is, you know, if I lead on something, if nobody follows me, I'm just a man out for a walk. So leadership is making sure that you lead and people follow. If they don't follow, then you're not leading. And I've learned leadership, and leadership comes in various different ways. And one's called transactional leadership. And transactional leadership is carrot and stick leadership, where you do this and this is what you'll get. And if you don't do it, then this is the downside of it. But there's also visionary leadership, you know, where you have the ability to show vision and people grasp that vision and are able to go in the same direction as you because they believe in that vision. So these are all things I've learned from a 16-year-old boy who started off guarding Rudolf Hess in the military, who guarded the cruise missiles in Greenham Common, who stood beside Colonel Tim Collins when he gave his Eve of Battle speech, who was on the Stary Most Bridge in Bosnia when it was reopened having been destroyed during the Bosnian War, and who served alongside Afghans in Afghanistan and created some great friends. All of these things I learned within the military, and now that I've become the leader of the Ulster Unionist Party, I'm able to take those very lessons that I've learned in life, if not in the classroom, but those lessons in life, and to be able to apply them to this leadership role.
So Aoife from St. Louise's, we'll come to Aoife from St. Dominic's in a moment. Would you like to follow up on anything that Doug's just said?
No, thank you.
Great. And Aoife from St. Dominic's, the floor is yours.
And Judith, given the fact that you come from a British Army background, what assurances can you offer to young nationalists that you can be impartial if you were to take a lead role within unionism based on the rising popularity of the UUP in recent polls?
Aoife too, thank you. I mean, it's a good question and a slightly alien question to me. I'm going to say to you, if I can, please, because when I served in the military, the last thing I asked anybody is who they were, what their religion was, or what their background was. I simply don't care. I served alongside people who were from a nationalist background, who were from a unionist background. I served beside Canadians and Fijians who served alongside with me. 10% of my regiment that I served in, 10% were from the Irish Republic. You know, so all I can say to people out there is this, that as somebody who's sitting in front of you, if I'm answering your question, I can say to you now, I have got absolutely no truck whatsoever with anybody who sees themselves as being a nationalist. I have no truck with anybody who sees himself as being a Republican. I don't care about people's religion. I genuinely do not. So people can look at me and saying that Doug is fair and he's open and he will be absolutely honest. And if they want to test me on that, then they can test me on that at any stage that they want. But it's right that I have to sell myself so that people believe that message I've just given you and that people trust me when I say that. But I literally have no issue with anybody. You know, I don't want to see anybody try to achieve their goals through any form of violence, be they loyalists, unionists, nationalists, or Republicans. So violence for me is something that we don't want to see. I've seen enough violence in my life being in the military, traveling around the world. But I absolutely respect those people who are Republicans, who want a united Ireland, and that's a fair aspiration, and I'm not afraid of it. I respect it, but it's not my aspiration, clearly. So I think people should be able to trust me, and I have to work at making sure they can trust me.
Yep. So Aoife, first, thank you very much for that, Doug. To answer your greeting a few moments ago, I don't know if it's for Doug and for me, Gia is Mario Ditch. And do you have you don't expect that. Do you have a follow-up for Doug? Were you happy with his answer?
No, thank you.
And do you want to ask anything further?
No, that's me.
No.
Thank
you.
Okay.
Goramai Agat, thank you very much for your question. And that really gets us on, I think, now to the future. And again, we've got two questions. I think the first one is from Niall of St. Patrick's and Downpatrick. And the first one, and the second one is from Molly in Lismore in Craigavon. Again, very near to you, not your constituency. Let's go to Molly first, and then let's go to Niall. Molly,
you said at the recent UUP party conference that campaigning for a fair and united Ireland is a fair aspiration and not to be feared. Does this mean that if a united Ireland did happen, that you would not oppose it and agree to accept it?
Well, I think it's an important question, Molly. And there's 2 points to this. First of all, people need to understand, as I said earlier, I'm Irish. It just so happens to be that I believe in Northern Ireland's part in the United Kingdom. So I'm Irish. The second thing is I'm an absolute Democrat. I remember when I spoke earlier, I said, and quite clearly, that I did not want Brexit, that I voted against Brexit, but Brexit came in, and that was the democratic wishes of the people of the United Kingdom, because it was a United Kingdom wide vote. So I had to accept that. I will campaign for Northern Ireland to stay within the United Kingdom. I believe Northern Ireland will stay within the United Kingdom. However, if there was a vote, and that vote was to say that there was to be a united Ireland, and that was a democratic vote, then being a Democrat, then I would accept that. Of course, I would accept that. And I would accept that, and I would stay here because this is still my home regardless. So being a Democrat, if we vote for United Ireland, then I accept that vote, if that's the democratic will of the people, north and south of this island.
Molly, are you surprised by that answer?
Yeah. Does it not make you fear that you will lose Unionist votes? Because obviously right now the Unionists are fearing, you know, a united Ireland with the protocol and stuff like that.
Well, I'm going to say something to you, Molly. I don't know what age you are. What age are you, Molly?
16.
Ah, goodness sake. I remember when I was 16. I wish I was 16 again. So Molly, listen, I'm 56. I'm going to say something to you, which many of you will disagree with, but I'll say it anyway. And please accept it when I say this. I'm 56, and I do not believe there will be a united Ireland in my lifetime. I do not believe there will be a united Ireland in my son's lifetime. I don't think the case has been made. I don't even think the case has been started to be made. So I'm quite confident, and I've always described myself as a confident unionist, and I'm Irish, an Irish confident unionist, you know, where the glass is half full, not half empty. So I'm quite confident in where I am. There are people who are out there who are very negative, who are very pessimistic, who will complain about there's a United Ireland around the corner every 2 minutes. I think they're wrong.
Would you be concerned? I mean, Michelle O'Neill is already the Deputy First Minister. Let's assume she stays there, becomes the First Minister. But there's an election in the South, and that the Mary Lou becomes the Taoiseach, or maybe even the Taoiseach. Would that worry you if both parts of Ireland, both jurisdictions, had Sinn Féin in one of the top two positions?
No, it wouldn't. Well, look, I wouldn't want it. Is the answer, because they're intrinsically opposed to what I want. You know, they want a united Ireland, and I don't. So of course, I don't politically. I don't want that to happen. Would I be fearful? No, I don't think I would do, because as we discussed earlier, it doesn't matter if Michelle O'Neill is the First Minister or the Deputy First Minister. There's two of them, and one can't sign a letter without the other signing a letter. So, you know, there's no movement that can come from that particular office. And I've got to say as well, and again, people can disagree with me, but I'll say it as well, that for many people in Northern Ireland who might come from a soft nationalist background or from a nationalist background, who absolutely oppose the politics of Sinn Féin, past and present, a Sinn Féin government in the Irish Republic could well end the United Ireland project, you know, because they would not vote in favour of it, and you might find a bigger swing to the status quo. So I don't fear it, Peter, is the answer. I don't want it, but I don't fear it.
But let me rephrase the question. If we forget about the North, because we've already got a Sinn Féin Deputy First Minister, and there was also in the Republic a Sinn Féin Taoiseach or Taoiseach, would that combination worry you? Because that would be a change to what we've got at the moment.
Yeah, it would be a change, but it would just be another. I mean, you have to look at it from my point of view as a unionist, Peter. I mean, I look towards Westminster. I don't look towards Dublin. I get that others look towards Dublin, not towards Westminster in many cases, but it wouldn't change anything. You know, you would still have an Irish government, which would have Sinn Féin at its heart, and people in Northern Ireland. And it's up to the people of Northern Ireland, remember, they're the ones who have the democratic vote. I don't think they would vote for United Ireland with a Sinn Féin government.
And I think we've got our last question. Thank you very much for that, Molly. I think our last question is from Niall at St. Patrick's.
Mr. Beattie, a recent BBC article was published revealing a potential decline of relations between Northern Ireland and the UK. Many people are concerned that due to the ramifications of Brexit, Northern Ireland is becoming segregated from the mainland United Kingdom. Do you see this breakdown as posing a genuine threat to Northern Ireland's existence? And do you feel that an Irish border poll will be likely in the near future?
I think there's a number of points there, Niall, and even outside of what you've asked me, and I'll give you an example. I had a telephone call with the Irish Taoiseach this morning at 9:30, and we talked about a whole range of things in regards to the EU and the UK and the protocol and Brexit. And he was really concerned that the relationship between the UK and Ireland was at its worst level in an awful long time. So these relationships you talk about, the relationship between the UK and Ireland, the relationship between the UK and the EU, the relationship between Northern Ireland and Ireland, all of them have been destabilized because of Brexit and the protocol. I think many of the issues that we face can be overcome, and I think that instability is cause for concern. But as I was saying earlier, I don't think that instability will create a border poll. I think there will be an awful lot of more instability to come, probably this month, maybe next month, before we get this issue sorted. But once we get it sorted and Northern Ireland starts to be more stable and starts to prosper, then we will get into normal politics again. So you're absolutely right that relationships between Northern Ireland and mainland GB are difficult, and I said earlier, many people in Northern Ireland feel isolated because of that. But I'm not one of those people. I'm old enough to know that politics ebbs and flows. What is happening within Westminster at the minute may not be ideal, but it'll not always be like that. They will move on eventually, and there'll be a new government in there, and things in the Irish Republic will change as well, and things in Europe will change. So by the time you're 24, we'll be sitting here in a completely different situation, I think.
Niall, do you have a follow-up question? Are you happy with the answer?
No, I think the answer provided was sufficient. I don't have a follow-up question. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that question, Niall. We've got, I think, 3 or 4 minutes, Doug, and I shall ask the final question, if I may. I'm aware that people are allowed to join the army when they're 16. Is that correct?
Yes,
and
I did.
Today's question, you've had a great range of questions. We had a previous meeting with another political leader, and someone came up to me afterwards and said, those questions were far too good. Did you write them all? And I replied, I wish I was that clever. The assurance I can give you, Doug, is that I haven't written any of today's questions. These all come from the young people themselves. And my question is this: given you can join the army at 16, shouldn't people like the ones we've had today and their fellow 16-year-olds be allowed to have the vote?
We have to rebalance our society, Peter. I think if you can join the military at 16, if you can get married with permission from your parents at 16, if you can go to work and pay taxes at 16, then you should be able to vote. So I think you have to do one of two things. You either rebalance it to give people a voice, if they're allowed to do all of these things, include contribute to our society through taxes. They should have the ability to vote. So I think that's a fair argument. I think it's one of those things where, I guess, if Northern Ireland had a citizens' assembly, it's one of those really good debating questions where people can give the pros and cons for it. And I've heard lots of pros and cons. Many of the cons are saying, well, at 16, you don't really know your mind and you're easily led. But then you say to yourself, well, what changes at 17? What changes at 18? Not a great deal. I think personally that a lot of our kids are, and I say kids, and that's an awful term to use, so I'm sorry. But if I look at our young people at 16, they all have a really good, bright mind. And I think they can look at a particular situation and say, this is the right thing to do. This is where the vote should go. So I think it's a great conversation. And although we haven't put a policy statement out on that particular issue, it's something that I would be certainly willing to engage with to look at the pros and cons of that. But just to finish, I'm back to what I said, Peter, you need to balance society. If you can get married at 16, get a job at 16, join the army at 16, contribute to society through taxes at 16, then it's difficult to say that you're not allowed to vote.
Doug, it's been a real privilege having you join us today. We've really enjoyed it. There have been some terrific questions, there have been some terrific answers, and I'd like to thank you very much for coming along and giving up your time so generously. Thank you.
You're a star, Peter. Thank you much indeed. And thank everybody for wonderful questions, really wonderful questions, really engaging questions. Very kind of them.
Thank you. All the best. Thank you, everybody.